All right, so let's, without further ado, reverse our journey. All right, okay. So, as I say, it's combining deep depth because it's asking questions we rarely, if ever, ask about ourselves, about like who are we, what we're about, what our values, our purpose, and so on. And yet, also in this incredible fast ride, both in terms of like the program itself, in series of free workshops, uh, our work and demands, and also just remarking there about the flight last 2 weeks flying by. So let's have a look there. So from today, we explored that starting point about exploring your values, your beliefs, your persona, your greatest hits. Is this journey of articulating character. And we're today going to be investigating further dimensions of your purposefulness and prime purposefulness to guide like where your character is going, and to explore this idea of a purpose manifesto that acts as a credo tool for, as I say, what we find for our program is that some people time might not just be right. They just don't feel it's the right time to sort of put pen to paper as such. But they've got immense value from just the journey of exploring values and beliefs and so on. So don't feel like this is a program that is a pass or fail if you do a purpose manifesto. That's not the intention. It's there as a tool, a help to be supportive and guide us forward. So we've got our program like that. So there's 60-minute sessions. Do ask you to, as I say, take advantage of buddy sessions like Ian's referring now. And also, if you've got the option, and please, it's entirely flexible. I mean, we can fix up a one-to-one session. After the session, I'll get some times out if anyone wants to pick up a one-to-one between now and 2 weeks' time. But, it's the sort of thing where I'm just so committed to making sure this works for you. The clock doesn't, the diary and the bookings don't stop after the next workshop. I'm entirely flexible, just to want to make sure you guys get the most in this program. So we referenced in our first workshop about humility, about just having this growth mindset, listening to experts, not just sort of experts like me being big-headed here, but also like anyone. So Ian's friend there, like his buddy is, and also anyone around. And it's about appreciative inquiry, taking on board even stuff you might sort of not disagree. Anything that helps you grow stronger is what we call anti-fragility. As I say, and it's growth journey going forward. Examples here of some purpose manifestos, which I'll come back to later in the session. So really a sort of today to review where we got from last week, and explore about how you got on with your journey so far. And so just, maybe just if I can stop the share there. Guys, anyone want to kick off how you shared any sort of work in progress you want to share?
I'll be honest, not much.
No problem there. But what about your thinking though? I mean, the fact that
I think what did it for me, and what I've been reflecting on since, is the fact that there isn't a one size fits all. That we've always got to flex things, and as our careers and our lives go on, both personal as well as professional, they're all going to shift as well. And every day is a school day. I mean, that's why we're on this course, of course, as well. And so it's, for me personally, it's reminded me, because I've been out of the corporate cycle of training and all the rest of it. It's reminded me that that I do need to keep in touch with certainly developments of things, and my journey doesn't stop just because I've stopped working for a big corporate. I'm working for myself now, so arguably I could say it's even more important because it all rests on my shoulders. So
very much. I mean, so in what you're describing there, you're going from a very well structured situation where partly your existence was defined by others, and now you're on this exciting, sometimes frightening, and journey of where you don't have those structures around you. So and some people thrive on that. Other people have to adjust, and some people find it very difficult. But it sounds like you're in very much the first camp there of making capitalizing seemingly and new chapters in your life. So there's some good observations there, mate. But I love that one. Every day's a school day. Deborah, I mean, how you been getting on?
Well, do you know what? It's really funny. I looked at the exploring values because obviously I did this course before, and I wanted to compare what I sort of looked at and ticked before to what I've done this time. And it's quite funny because some of the things last time I was like, yeah, I really like that. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Now I'm like, well, looking at the ones that I'm not comfortable with, why am I not comfortable with them? And do I want to explore that area? So I think there's a lot more before it was more kind of work related, whereas now I'm looking at myself and my personality rather than work and thinking, right, no, I think I really need to look at this than the work side. So things like I think there was a couple on here about spirituality and beliefs and things, and I'm thinking before that's irrelevant to my work, but actually it's not irrelevant to my work, as I've recently found out. So I think I need to start exploring things like that and looking at other side of the values than I did before. And it kind of you have to expand things, and yeah, going back to what Ian said, every day is a school day. It's true, but yeah, I'm looking at things in a different way from that particular exercise, the exploring values, definitely.
So it sounds like we're sort of we're providing a sort of a map and a tour guide of the different sort of values that are out there, and you know, so to A, make you aware they're there, and B, also like there's something behind the door of them, and the potential to explore. So yes, so I mean, one of the sort of interesting challenges is this idea about greatest hits. You know, sort of you've got to create a greatest hits albums, and far too often I find that from experience of people just busy and like, oh well, yeah, I did that, and I think this is a really valuable exercise in taking stock of, like, you know, the sort of thing. Actually, I did that. I mean, like Deborah, you mentioned about sort of the jobs different now and so on. So that could count as another sort of greatest hits in terms of like the greatest responsibility you mentioned. And as I say, so we sort of often don't take stock of like that sort of thing, and it could be in a formal sense. So Ian previously shared about is like becoming like a formal, like a master of ceremonies and so on. So there's some things that help us on that journey by, you know, formal designations, officials, you know, sort of certificates and labels that are given to us. But equally, there's other stuff where you think, yeah, looking about that. I mean, and also the fact that and the outside of work ones, I think, are particularly profound. I mean, as I said, I shared a story about when my kid brother, who was profoundly autistic and couldn't speak, and 9 years old, I taught him to ride a bike. And I'm not sort of crowing about it, but it just made me reflect, well, actually, I'm bloody proud of the 9-year-old me. And also that, well, you know, what are the qualities there that actually maybe reveal the sort of deeper thing underneath about me that going forward here. So and as I say, so it's the work ones, the non-work ones that, you know, even like they say, even like the spirituality sense of, like, you know, a degree of sensitivity. So I'm just wondering if there's anything to share in terms of embryonic ideas about, like, you know, actually putting in my greatest hits, here's some potential contenders. I just wonder if anything you'd like to share. Obviously, it's very private, but I mean, if there's anything you'd like to share on that sort of exploration, that investigation now.
I think with the spirituality ones from the exploring values, I had a chat this week. We do a lot with students and social mobility. So I think I didn't realize how some of the children that we're encouraging to work in our industry come from different ethnic backgrounds, and that affects what they insure. So I think, you know, before it was just about the work, but now I've got to look at it in a different way and how we can reflect that with what we do. But also I've got to think about myself as be more aware of these things. It's not because I don't want to know, it's just I wasn't aware before. It was the unknown. So I really got to kind of embrace what's going on to help these people coming into our industry for the next generation. And also, you know, it's really interesting when you hear about this stuff. I never knew about it, but I'm finding it really interesting, and it's a complete learning curve, and I like it. I want to embrace that.
So again, very profound. I mean, so and I would suggest also it's not maybe just a journey about of awareness, and therefore I've got to maybe adopt some tactics and stuff in response to that. But there's opportunity to expose you sort of to deeper learning, deeper insight that. Going back to this thing about appreciative inquiry and growth mindset and anti-fragility. I mean, I shared this story a few years ago. I did a working gig in Saudi Arabia, and to be candid, I mean, I was a bit wary of like accepting it or going because I thought, well, I've got quite a few Jewish friends out there. There's issues about sort of some of the Saudi regime and so on. But I went, and it was a gig with one of the biggest sort of retailers and their marketing team, and there's about a dozen in the team and stuff. And at the end of the 3 days I was with them, the marketing director took me out for a dinner, a bank. Even I couldn't bloody eat it all. And at the end of the meal, he ordered for a doggy bag, and I thought, bloody hell, this guy's got the most flashiest car for any marketing director I've been in. And he's getting a doggy bag. Now, if you're in Saudi Arabia, you see that in the streets have these people, like, you know, very poor people that sweep in the street and so on, like with their brooms and stuff. Anyway, so we're driving back to my hotel, and he stops over, he pulls over, says, Andrew, and he passed me the doggy bag to give to the road sweeper. And I just thought that was immensely profound. And I thought that, and again, the point I was sharing the story is that we not only just learn and be aware of, but also learn and grow from. That, you know, actually, that's me going out there thinking, oh, bloody, like, you know, a bit of a toxic culture or whatever here, and yet I came back humbled, realizing that actually things are not a simple black and white. There's something to learn and respect from any dimension, and maybe. Am I guilty of not doing the equivalent of giving the road sweeper the doggy bag, so to speak, to create a new metaphor? So it's a fabulous story, that, Deborah. And as I say, we're blessed so that these sort of work opportunities create things that you wouldn't maybe otherwise have there. So to seize and grow from that. Ian, any thoughts about your sort of greatest hits at all? I mean, which, as I say, you're assisted by the fact you've got some very formal landmarks that you can, rightly proudly of. Any other thoughts there?
I think what I'm struggling with is because my life at sea was so intertwined with my personal stuff. It's very difficult to sift because you do things professionally, you do things personally, and sometimes they obviously they overlap, and this is what we're talking about here as well. So this is, to my mind, I am struggling a bit with my personal stuff in terms of what I've managed to achieve personally, in terms of what I would say my greatest hits were, what my greatest achievements were. I could have been the first at this, the first at that, but that tends to slip into the category of, oh, aren't I good, as opposed to what can I learn from it more than anything else, to be a bit more modest and a little more humble about those achievements rather than shouting about them. And I think that's because we sort of I've come from an environment where, that's supposed to be celebrated and shouted about, and everybody shouts about it. But usually it's the things like you just described there, the ones that go under the radar, effectively, those small acts of kindness and things that say more about us as people rather than us as professionals, if that makes any sense. And I'm sort of struggling with more of the personal values of the professionals. I can go through my CV and that will trigger, yes, I've done that, I did that, wasn't that great and everything, but I don't have a life CV. And I think that's something that's quite an interesting, where my mind is going at the minute is we're forced to write a CV, a professional CV, to get us a job. We don't write a life CV to get on in life.
Yeah, that's a lovely. I think it's a wonderful metaphor. Like, we should write CVs about getting the job to like us more. I'm applying for a job to like more, and
every CV is very positive, isn't it? It tends not to have "I got sacked" in it. Let's be honest, So, but that was probably a huge learning curve for that person when that happened. And if you're honest with yourself, you can digest all of that and dissect it and go, well, why, and ask those infinite annoying child why questions 5 times till you get to the root cause. But then we're not as open and honest about that with our own personal stuff. So it does tend to have a bias, if you like, to the positive side of things, whereas the negative side of things, which is usually how we grow and how we learn, from that, you know, we don't tend to learn very much from success. We tend to learn more.
Totally.
We're not. We are intrinsically programmed, if you like, and wired to not necessarily bring that to the fore all the time. And I think, you know, because that doesn't matter, does it? You know, I mean, you don't necessarily want to share that with other people, you know, because you don't want to be associated with negativity, and hence, you know, I think that's, you know, choice of buddy to have conversations with this. And I mean, you know, I've only just met you two, you know, but I'm happy to share to an extent some certain things. But of course, it tends to dwell on the more negative aspects of things, but they are the most useful.
Absolutely right there. I mean, you learn more from your failures and your successes, and I couldn't agree more. But I think you made me appreciate a point. It was almost this sort of compound reinforcement against the learning that, you know, the system like mitigates, the environment mitigates against you actually sort of recognizing it, acknowledging it, and learning and growing from it. That, you know, sort of there's a compound reinforcement against it, which I think is an interesting point there. Two maybe techniques I would perhaps consider. I'm passionate in my creativity teaching about role models. So a role model is someone who inspires you, and it could be a particular quality. You don't necessarily have to like them. So, for example, like Margaret Thatcher, I definitely weren't a fan, but you think, you know, she had the power of, like, you know, stand up in adversity and persistence and stuff. So, you know, what would Margaret do here? So using that sort of bit of that quality of that person. So my suggestion is having two role models. One is like the car salesperson role model, where, like, you know, we are, like, you know, highlighting our good bits. Well, go OTT on that. You know, what really are the good bits that, you know, sometimes, hey, yeah, there's that, and I did that, and actually, yeah, there was that as well. That was that there, yeah, as well. But then the other is the one of, like, the sensitive role, like, person who thinks, like, you know, come on, you know, well, you know, when was you really good, and when was you really, like, kind, or whatever is, like, pertinent to you. So using, like, having those sort of role models act as good provocations to draw out from, like, both different ends of the spectrum. And I think you need that for this, because essentially we're doing a fishing exercise here, like, to identify and then elaborate. So I think that's good. And then the other story technique I use in my storytelling workshops, I teach about how there's a number of, like, 5 common plots in storytelling, and one of them is what's called overcoming the monster. So overcoming a monster is, you know, it's the basis of most films and books. Like, the hero's minding their own business, monster comes on the scene, and by the time you finish the book or left the cinema, the monster is slain. So, you know, what have been the monsters in your life that you've helped overcome? What have been the monsters that, you know, you actually think, you know, like, you know, I mean, I did, like, me about my younger kid brother. I mean, you know, it was horrible at times, being, you know, things you had to endure, like going out with my brother and seeing people talk about you behind your back and stuff. But it's made me who I am, you know, because my daughter said, Dad, excuse the language here, you don't give a toss what people think about you. But, you know, and that's come from that experience. So my suggestion is, like, you know, explore. So actually, yeah, there was this issue where, you know, I had this maybe self-doubt, or I had this sort of obstacle, I had this problem, and I overcome that monster. And then in that sort of story, it's a story, but also then explore what were the qualities that helped you overcome that monster. And does that make sense? I mean, but I just think this, from what you've shared there, you know, you've clearly had, like, you know, life's full of riches experiences, but sometimes we need a bit of a sort of a laser fishing rod at times, or a better, you know, a fine-tuned net to sort of harvest them. So they're there. There's an immense. I mean, you know, as I say, everyone's, as I say, rich experiences. You know, both positive, what seem on the surface positive and negative, but there's also an immense amount, as you say, below the radar, below the surface, that harvest there.
I think a lot of that as well, though, Andy, is to do with that creating the confidence around the purpose point. Yeah, because unless you've got the confidence to go in that right mindset in the first place, you're not going to get very far down that line. I think that's possibly, I stared for inspiration at the 5 steps to the Dublin window, and the very first one, I go, create confidence. I go, I can do it in this bit, but not necessarily in this bit. And I think that's where I'm I'm sure once I get going, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
But it's that, I think that is the biggest hurdle. Is that why it's the biggest star on the
If I can just elaborate, so confidence means, as you sort of use in that context, about self-belief. But in a Dublin conversation, we all talk about earned confidence, which Porrick, my co-friend, lovely says in his Irish, it's a reliable expectation of subsequent reality. So you've shared that you've got confidence you're going to get to this funeral today. But I'm saying it's damn windy day or whatever. But I've got an expectation that you're gonna get to the funeral. So in any action that you've turned up today within I've succeeded in an earned confidence that turn up for that second session. It's not bad with Andy after all. So our life is
that was a struggle. Yeah, that was a real struggle
with others to accept that I'm not going to attack you, kill you, whatever. Say yes or be supportive. So so it's both those dimensions there of a self-belief, and also then how you go about life, ensuring that this subsequent reliable expectation of subsequent reality in your own mind, and also then how if you look at those 5 stars of doubling, like earn it with others, others earn it among themselves, and like the mood of the time sort of thing. So that's the challenge we've got, is that we live life on this, essentially a bit about showing me a bit of hovercrafts on this sort of cushion of confidence, and that's a confidence that self-propels us, but also then connects us with others, if that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so can I move on and say, just to sort of share some further dimensions to add to our exploration. And so, as you say, our journey is about identifying our character, and we don't cover social instincts in this program, but social instincts are like how you're defined by yourself and others, and are you a we-led person where your instinct is to respond in the communal interest, or a me-led person where your instinct is to think, well, act in your self-interest. And this was inspired by a sort of law of human nature that sociologists have now established, that 2 out of 3 people will help a stranger and 1 out of 3 don't. So there's an instinct there that's about, like, in how you respond to situations. But there is a social instincts tool on the Dublin Conversations if you want to explore that, but I'll just reference that now. But we're going to be focusing really on about purposes and prime purposefulness for the rest of our journey, and really going forward there. So we explore about what we learned about ourselves, again with the values exercise. Do these online post-it notes, and sort of harvest your journey, where you're going to come up with maybe 10, 20, 50, whatever number. And by using the online post-it notes and then doing a chunking exercise where you group them together, and you might find that one of the values, describes it all, or you come up with your own label to describe that sort of going forward there. And then, as I say, so interesting. I'm in a period of fact. I'm in the process of reviewing my values here. So I'll share that maybe next session when I sort of work on it. But we create this diamond of a guiding light diamond, and the point I make there is to really highlight this is an organic process. And the point that Deborah was saying about, like, on the dimension of spirituality, we're constantly exploring new dimension, new depths. It's not necessarily changed our minds, but rather there's an aspect that's maybe a greater emphasis, that maybe rather than sort of I've said that, now I'm thinking this. It's an elaboration of our journey, and the idea then is to create a narrative from linking these values together. So the top of the diamond is your sort of guiding star. The bottom of the value is your pick you up when you're knocked down, and on the left and the right are your enabling values to enable you on your journey going forward. So does that make sense, guys, in terms of the task you've got with your values? So you're exploring them, you're going through the catalogue of values there on offer. You're drawing up a short list. You're then refining them and identifying your five. Five's a magic number because you can only remember 5 things, and then from those 5, weave them together in like your narrative. You're both happy on that understanding that this task. Is that okay, man? Yeah. And now then, as I say, so the persona. Did either of you have a chance to explore this at all? Ian, you're on mute, mate. Sorry.
Just put myself on mute. No, I haven't done that yet.
Yeah. Again, I think they're great value. Deborah, you had a chance yet?
No, I did look at it, to be honest, but it's one of those things where probably where the buddy comes in handy, because you might want to pick so many things and your buddy's like, what are you doing? No, that's not you. I know this is probably what you yourself think of it, but I think there's something in maybe all of those that everyone has something about them, definitely. But there's not one that actually sticks out as you know, there's not one. I think there's definitely a variety of them there for me personally, but I'm not sure if a colleague or a friend of mine would agree. I'm not sure.
But I would say, I mean, you've got choices here. So I had one delegate who was absolutely sort of adamant, like, well, I don't really want to engage with this. And really, it strikes me that they're actually like the regular guy type thing in one way, because the advantage this offers is it gives you greater cut through in how you tell your own story to yourself and others. And if people have got if you've got that greater clarity, it gets you to say yes or no quicker, and it also gives you a more defined way of standing out, and also then gives you a character note to give consistency. So my experience is that most people, by default, if they are sort of doing a story where they adopt the ruler, like, we're the best, we're like, we're going to get on with this, we're in charge. Whereas the reality is that that's not inappropriate for a lot of people. Whereas if you're maybe a hero, you tell your story about the problem. There was this problem there, but then I stepped in and did this. The other stories are creative. Like I worked with a number of other people to create. We produced a really great, like it was a team effort of my specialist skills contributing here. The one thing I would say is that probably like there's about 8 or so that immediately, when you look at this in any sort of depth at all, you can discount. So I mean, if I can jump feet first here, with apologies, in a sort of mentor rather than a coach role, Deborah, I'd suggest to you that maybe like the jester is not your prime character there, or the regular guy, because you strike me as someone who's got to stand out and is not like their default is not to sort of hide bit in the crowd, and that's their strategy of getting by. But you're up there up front. Possibly the sage, in that you may have lots of knowledge, but your role is not necessarily there to be like the #1 expert. That you can draw upon knowledge here, and then likewise with ruler, you're not necessarily like the #1 person absolutely in charge of your world. You're working with others, and you're certainly not the outlaw. So you can see there. So we've got a process there of elimination, and it strikes me that there's some potential candidates there of creator. I actually think lover. I mean, I hate it's a rubbish label, but it's a really good one for people who offer a strong interpersonal service. That the bit that you care, you listen and learn, and so on. An interesting bit you said there about the people from different religions. That strikes me that you're a listener. You work empathetic with people. So that's the hero. Like, look at me, I'm coming in here to your rescue. But that suggests to me that there's a sort of carer, lover, sage. So carer, creator, lover, carer, mode at work there possibly. So you know, listen out for clues. Does that make sense? I'm not. Ben, apologies. I'm not trying to pigeonhole you there, but just
No, I think there's a lot of what you say resonates. I think lover is such a, you know, it's a default. People think of lovers and they think, oh, it's coming up to Valentine's Day. It must be lovers. You know, it's not quite like that at all. I think loving, I think, is closely associated with passion.
yeah.
And to be passionate, I think a passionate label is possibly more appropriate in a theoretical sense than a lover label, which is quite emotional. Whereas I know passion is emotion, but it tends to tag on better for something that's more quantifiable than loving.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, if I can be, I'm being presumptuous here, but like you're going to a funeral today in difficult, like potentially difficult travel conditions. That to me signals that there's someone who's got a strong caring facet to you. I mean, so it's looking for clues in their behaviour. And then the other thing I would say then is really with the advent of AI, put this in chat GPT, with like some prompts. As I say, I mean, I'm thinking of these profiles here, and just put in the prompt like what your initial thoughts are, and get a response from chat GPT on that. And that, I'm not saying that to put the information in the box to give you an answer, but it will come up with some suggestions that with some provocations that you might then want to sort of think about going forward. So certainly once you've done this exercise, and then if I can move on to the beliefs, because your beliefs are your most profound foundation stones. But just asking people at the outset, what are your beliefs? Why it's so overwhelming. But by doing the journey of values and persona, we ask them, well, what's the underpinning beliefs? Now that AI is fabulous on this, in that if you then put in, well, these are my values, this is my story of how, and this is my character of this. What are the underpinning beliefs to this? It will come up with a good candidate list. And again, don't treat it as gospel, but treat it as an interesting provocation to help you on your journey going forward there. So please, please, please do harness this AI. It's a brilliant, brilliant tool, not for answers, but to facilitate your thinking journey going forward there. Does that make sense there, guys? As I say, so as I say, with that sort of bedrock of values, persona, beliefs, and we're then emerging about the stories. And on your journey about stories, then think, well, I've got this sort of value here, this belief here. Is anything that puts that into practice that shows, that brings that alive? And that will help reinforce that as a value. But then also, if you're struggling, it might highlight that there's maybe that you've yet to identify the value that's been the driver for what you witnessed in your behaviors and your doing. Because your behaviors, your actions and your doing are the most profound sort of statements about what's important to you, what's salient to you, what is the inner you that you decide to act and take action on. That's the sort of clues to sort of the true you as such. Does that make sense there? Okay, so we're looking to establish with your manifesto a timeline. And so in my story workshops, time of past, present, future is the most basic narrative pattern. But most people's narratives are weak because that middle picture there, your story of now, is actually shaped and defined by your story of past and story of future. Some people dwell maybe over too much on the past, and their story is one of nostalgia of past. I'll give you an example. I did some work with a law firm once in the Midlands, and had these fabulous oil paintings of these former partners of the firm. But these oil paintings stopped about like 1950, 60. And so I immediately said to him, well, look, if I was you, I'd get some paintings done, because you're telling a story that you used to be good, but now you're not so good. You can see like the telling of their story was over focused on the past and the future going forward. Whereas as a successful story, so I imagine Deborah, like the insurance industry, is one that plays its sort of story of past, of stability and reliability, but then also one maybe of innovation, flexibility, and adaptability. So that's a very, very powerful story of now that you've got there, than just one of, oh, we did this, we did this, we did this. Does that make sense there? So in your future, so Ian, you mentioned yourself, like you've sort of a new future ahead. My suggestion is like weave that in as one of your prompts to say, well, like you've obviously got a vision, a picture in your head of what you're looking to achieve. As I say, articulate that and treat that as as a fact, because it is a fact in your head, even if even it may not have materialized as in the exterior world there. So my suggestion is write your story down as past, future, present. So have a go at doing it past, present, future, and by doing that, the second one, you're going to find in it as more sort of stepping stones, bits of ladder to like the story of your future, which gives you a much stronger story of now. Does that make sense? I mean, so going forward then. So then, in terms of also your story, so your greatest hits. So let's really the specific thing about purpose. So we're suggesting that the purpose is that sort of three key ingredients. So you have a business purpose, and that really could like so. This tallies with like Darwin talked about all creatures have a purpose, that is to survive, grow, and multiply. So that counters the argument about people, I don't bother with this purpose bit. Well, hello, you have got a purpose, and that might be just to survive. And some people, like their number one and sole purpose is their business purpose. Like, I'm here to make money. It's not my choice, but it is a purpose. So my suggestion to you would be to identify, say, like, in your business purpose, so in the year ahead, I want to earn X amount of pounds. That is a purpose. I love this formula. I get so much value from it. And it's how you earn the money. So it's formula of I help X to do Y so they can achieve Z. I help X to do Y so they can achieve Z. And it yields some really rich insight words that I think give you further rocket fuel and substantiate what you're doing already, but I think help you go forward faster because it gives you a much greater clarity in explaining what you're about. And then always questions like, why is your customers' world a better place because of what you do? So Deborah, like those young people coming to you from different backgrounds and so on, I think you told a lovely story then. They've helped you, but I think you've bloody helped them, in terms of not going there. So we have a business purpose, but then you have the creative purpose. And by creative purpose, it's a central question of like why you do what you do. So, what is it you find meaningful? Like what you're good at, what you care about. And what do you really find meaningful? And Ian, that dreaded asked the question 5 times. Why? And why is your world a better place for doing what you do? So you remember the film at Christmas, A Beautiful Life, where the hero sees the world, fed up with the world and wish I hadn't been born, and then sees a world where they hadn't been born and the consequences from that. Whose lives have you touched that, as I say, where your thumbprint, your shadow, your imprint, whether it's like the story there about Deborah and the students, or Ian, I'm sure many like people of events and so on speak proudly and gladly of you. So that question there, and this is perhaps the most challenging one of the whole program because it's essential to your purpose, like why you do what you do. And then there's a social purpose, which people tend to think of as just like doing good. Whereas it's about who do you need, because no person is an island. Who do you need in your world to enable you to do what you do? And then, and how you do that. So why should others help you? Ian, if I can make a point, it's like the famous American baseball player, Yogi Berra, who the Yogi Bear cartoon character is named after. If you don't go to other people's funerals, they won't come to yours. it's that sort of syndrome there of like, what sort of networks, communities do you need to be cultivating? And then why is the world a better place for you and others for you achieving your business and creative purposes? So some useful deconstruction of this sort of purpose question, and to identify like these sort of three pillars of like the business, creative, and social purpose going forward there. Does that make sense there in terms of like this sort of map, this sort of skeleton, this structure of going forward? So then going forward, your prime purpose canvas, and I'm going to get, forgive me, I'll get these tools sent over to you. You know, so state what your business purpose is, what your creative purpose is, what is your social purpose. And then the question now, what's the balance? So for some, I just want to make money. Others, you know, I've known artists who just want to paint pictures, not really worried about selling them or whatever, or showing them other people. For them, it's, you know, that's their one. Or social purpose. Others who don't have any necessarily economic career business, but just want to be part of a community. Others is a balance. Well, I'm a mix. So for much of my career in PR and as a creative PR person was this sort of business and creative purpose. My job there is to make money with this and through using this talent I've got here. Now I'm much more sort of driven about a social, you know, communal good. So where like all three are equal in my regards there. And there's some tools here to help you. So if there's an actor or an actress playing you, who would it be? And who would it be like maybe like the old you or the one you maybe not, and maybe who the one you aspire to? If you're a pet, what sort of pet would you be? A kitchen item, a car, a sports thing. You know, as I say, so just using metaphors. Metaphors are a brilliant creative tool because a metaphor is a message that works on a number of levels. So if you say by saying, "Well, I'm this sort of car," there's a message there on a number of levels that help you to explore, dig deeper there. What's your prime story? Like, what would be your catchphrase? Like, just do it, or change the world. Should be placed. Or what would be your three key words? If you had to sum yourself up in three key words, bang, 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 what would it be? And again, it could be derived from your values possibly there as well, though. So you can see there then it creates a synthesis then of these different elements going forward. Does that make sense there? And in fact, just to sort of elaborate a bit further. So you can see like those three circles and that of business, creative and social. And, you know, there's a map there. So, you know, some is about being like absolutely purposeful. Others is about doing like new, like commercial products. Others, it's about new social products. Others is about expanding into other markets from what they're doing. Others is just to enjoy like the business, money, success. Some just the creative success. Others the social success. So it gives you, that's where that comes from. So it gives you sort of a map of how you know, of identifying like where your emphasis is. Yeah. So there's all tools there, and that is, I mean, it might say, well, I don't want to be pigeonholed or whatever, but it's there as a tool rather than as a prison cell or a box. So does that make sense there, this journey about you identify your individual three purposes there and the relative strengths and interplay between them. And then that then can help you elaborate about where, like, you know, your main emphasis role. This goes into sort of community. I mean, this is initially designed really for when we work with organizations, you know, identifying their common strategies. But I just find it useful, like the little map there to help people see how these things interplay there. And any thoughts there about this this latest phase of your journey about identifying your purposes? Oh.
I really liked the slide before where you were showing there about it was because that does come back to the why. I mean that I love the metaphors thing. I've never thought about. I keep thinking of myself as like I was on a course once where we were asked to describe ourselves as an animal, and if we were an animal, what animal would we be? And I got teamed up as the odd person that couldn't couple up with anybody else they knew with the course tutor. who'd only just met me, and she decided that I was a koala bear because I looked cuddly and everything, but watch out for the claws. And it's like when you start attaching animal characteristics to people, you start to think of it in a different way. But I think this is far more relatable. This prime purpose canvas is far more relatable, and it's simpler to because I think I can't because of everybody else, but quite a lot of this information in the short space of time we're receiving it can be quite overwhelming. But actually, like, so this slide is where it's just anchored everything for me in terms of pulling it all together.
Yeah. And can I just, I should have had the helpful one. I've ruined your showers for the next few days. Am I this? Am I that? Am I this? So this one really gets under the skin and under your consciousness.
If you can send this slide, because my buddy is in Oxfordshire, and I'd love to have a Zoom call where I can share the screen.
Yeah, I'll get this all sent to you. My apologies. I'm in London this week, so I'm just
because what I am trying to do, because I'm trying to explain this to my buddy now, where I need to pull this up on the screen.
Yeah. Well, no, but also I'll get a copy of the recording as well. That might be of help to them as well. So I think. But yeah. So Deborah, how are you feeling about this sort of stage?
Sorry, I agree with Ian. I think this slide really does kind of set it out well, and it's definitely one to think about. I have to say I haven't been asked what sort of animal I would be if I was one. In fact, all of those questions on there, I've never been asked before, so that will take some thought. But the point is, it's definitely setting it all out. I like describe the 3 words like in having a catchphrase. I think that's a difficult one to do, but challenging. I quite like that. And I like the fact on the next slide you had the Venn diagram. So you've got all the 3 sections overlapping, because as we've been talking on this session and the one before, there is that kind of like, oh, is that me, or is that my job, or is that both? And it's trying to separate 2, but they do overlap. So that kind of summed it up a little bit as well for me. But yeah, this is quite an interesting one. And I think, I don't know how Ian feels, but I know when if I'm out with friends or whatever, and someone says, oh, tell me about what you do, talk about yourself. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. I can talk about what I do and the people I work with. But when someone says, oh, tell me about you, find it so difficult, or to write about yourself, because you don't want to seem like you're kind of bigging yourself up to be the big I am, but you don't want to sort of sell yourself short. I find that incredibly difficult. So I think getting over that hurdle, doing something like this is also very beneficial. But I think it will be quite a challenge. Yeah, definitely.
When I mentioned before, because I've been thinking about, because it only came to me during the course of this session, about this life CV, and it's the personal CV. So if I was applying for the job of being your friend, Deborah, what qualifications have I got to be your friend? No. I think when you start thinking of it in those terms, we've got to the professional positions we've been in because we've had a career progression, a ladder, or whatever else. In the same way, we have been emotionally developing. Each life experience has made us a slightly better or worse person, or whatever else. But we don't put that down on 2 sides of A4 in terms of, this is my job, this is my early life, this is Andy teaching his autistic brother to ride a bike. That was childhood thing. And from that, he then went on in a different way to develop a different set of emotional skills and qualities that made him likable, or a prime candidate to be somebody else's friend, because he had caring attributes, he had all of those other things that are less tangible, if you like. So when you put them down into a life CV, an emotional CV, would you get the job? Because that's what we're talking about here as well, with this overlap. That what we're talking about, we're innately qualified to do the job in insurance, or the job on a ship, or whatever. But you know, we never analyze whether we're and to an extent, there's an argument that we shouldn't do it anyway. But why would I be a good friend to my friend? Why would I be a good father? Why would I be a good brother? What makes me a good brother? What doesn't make me actually a good brother? What should I therefore focus a bit more on doing?
Yeah, and I think there's an element of like life reinforcement against that, because you don't want to be seen to be big-headed or like boastful. And I think there is a balance to be here. I mean, for example, I've shown my age here, but there are two great comedians, Eric Sykes and Tommy Cooper. And Tommy Cooper said to Eric Sykes, why am I funny? And Eric Sykes said, don't analyze it, Tom. Relevant areas, but sort of over analysis, but there's an element there of like some analysis. And I think also one thing this does feed into it is then your underlying beliefs. So there's a belief at work at the moment you described there, Deborah, that possibly me as a person is of less significance than me in my work role person. Possibly, I'm sorry, I'm getting deep. You see where I'm coming from, but so when you do your beliefs, have a reflection on that about how maybe there's a further belief that needs to be instilled or added to or strengthened about I am worthy of recognition, respect, or valuing in some way. Okay, so I'll send those tools over to you there. I don't know if you had a chance to do the picture storming yet, but I would urge you to do so. So when you've got some of these sort of keywords that have emerged in your values and so on, put them in a photo library. There's a Pixabay, I think I mentioned before. There's some great photo libraries out there. And the joy of this is and there is a help on it, because this is such pleasurable exercise that you end up like, bloody hell, it was an hour gone there or something. But you do, as I say, it's a great one. I think, hey, it's when the photo jumps out at you. It's an instinctive thing, rather. And so, and I was just having to go at this, once you've got some like words, keywords refined, and like Debbie's saying about like 3 keywords there, then put them in a picture and see what comes, and then that will help advance your conversation that you're having with yourself at who you is, what you're really about, and what matters to you, and why you do what you do there. So we've got our final workshop in 2 weeks' time, but I would say that's not our final get together. I'm there for you guys. I'm desperately keen to be supportive of good people. We've got a very complex challenge packaged in a way that's made to be attractive, time friendly. But the reality is sometimes it may require more or whatever to realize it. And for some people, they may not want to produce their sort of purpose manifesto. But for others, as I say, I find it an incredibly valuable tool. Helps reinforce, picks you up when you get down, gives you clarity in terms of where you're going forward in your quest going there. So okay, and again, like one called Buddy, called on friends and family to be alone there, and really be the tidal wave to explore the heights, the depths, to be like that sort of coiled spring and enjoy whatever success you see going forward there. Okay, so see you, as I say, I'll send some dates with meetings if you want to meet prior to next week. But as I say, so in the next workshop. So as I say, so you've got a task here of consolidating the earlier work, and then adding to that then like the purposes and the prime purposefulness. And that in turn then will help refine you on your journey about your stories going forward then. And you see, so it's not sort of a linear process. It's a sort of a messy one of like things feeding off each other, and things emerging and being receptive to that emergence there. So again, throwing right at you there, Deborah, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I've made some notes, or copious notes, as we've been going through the session today. So yeah, I the thing is, what I'd really like to do is just get off this call and do it. But obviously I've got to get off this call, go to a meeting, and then do something else. But it's definitely set some cogs in motion. I'm in between meetings. I'm going to be making more notes and working on it. I like the picture one. That I think will be quite therapeutic, looking at the pictures. Yeah.
Well, what we've done is began the incubating process. So even though like, on the surface you're at these meetings, the brain's working on these things unconsciously, and at appropriate times, ideas might appear out of the blue, or reconnect when you've got some time with them there. But yeah, do because I say you're clearly both fabulous people, and you deserve this. In terms of a story and a self appreciation of who you are and what you're about. Ian, how are you feeling, mate?
I think I'm going to struggle getting the focus the next couple of weeks, if I'm honest. just because of where I'm at professionally. But I will give it a go, and I think that it's to Deborah's point, really. There's bits where you just gotta, I think, shift this up in your subconscious a bit more in terms of start thinking more about the words that would describe you, and if I was a car and if I was a pet, what would it be? And I think, as you've said there, Andy, it's like you've spoilt all the time in the shower now, because we're going to be drifting off into thinking, you know, I'm going to have a quick walk around Chester Zoo for inspiration, and maybe, and just go, what sort of animal? I don't know if I was an animal or a pet. Or
Just doing research.
Yeah, well, you know, I can justify it. I'm probably a French bulldog at the minute. I don't know.
That's another great one, actually, for vegetarians. I missed that one, man.
Yeah, but you know, that's maybe that's the forefront of mine for different reasons. I don't know, but I'm feeling, I think I need to put some extra time aside, because we do pack a lot into these hour sessions, as Deborah said, and I think it's just taking that step back to sort of, I need it all to click together still, you know. And I think that's what I need to give myself time and be gentle with myself over all of that, and to not fall into the trap of becoming overwhelmed just because of the volume of stuff we've been given in 2 hours. Is to take a step back and just give myself that time, rather than go, which is what I like about what you say, Andy, about there's no rush, there's no right or wrong, there's no this, you don't have to write this, you don't have to do that. You're giving us the tools and the foundation on which to build. I just like building a house. There's going to be some delay because of the weather. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. So in my creativity classes, I teach about harnessing incubation, where, you know, you haven't got time immediately. So, but pose the question and then let your unconscious unravel and work on it there. So, guys, Ian, safe travels today, mate. And as I say, I'll get some email ups with the tools that we've shared, new tools that we shared today, a copy of the recording, and I say dates for any, if you so want to do a one-to-one before the next workshop there. Yeah. I don't know about you, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've certainly grown and learned a lot in this last hour. So thank you incredibly much. Appreciate it. Safe travels. Look after yourselves, and see you soon. Take care.
Thank you very much. Take care, Andy. Bye bye, Ian. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.